Hey everyone, I'm talking about code switching. So I pre-recorded this, so you're just going to hear me talking about it. But that's what I chose to write my bibliography and my paper on. Um, First, I wanted to show you some funny pictures about code switching. The first one's a t-shirt that says, I speak Spanglish 7 días a week and 24 horas all day. And then the second one is a meme that says, sometimes I'll start a sentence in English y termino en español. And I thought both of those were really funny and they're really good examples of code switching, so I just wanted to share them with you. Um, Introduction. Code switching is the process of switching between two or more languages during a conversation. Bilingual and multilingual people often use code switching in everyday conversation. So if you've met any bilingual and multilingual people, you would probably notice that they might code switch. If you've worked with any students that are learning English as a second language, then you've probably seen them do it. Sometimes they'll be writing and they'll write in English and then they'll get to a point where they don't know the word and they'll put it in another language, like in Spanish, and then they'll keep going with the English. Sometimes it's just when they can't find the word, they use the word that they can think of to describe what they're trying to say. Also, sometimes there are idioms and stuff like that that don't quite translate, so sometimes they'll put them in Spanish because they don't know the correct idiom in English. And at the bottom, I just put the same example from before. And again, with code switching, it doesn't have to be like an entire part of the sentence or the end of a sentence. It can be one word or a few words throughout or phrases or whatever. And now I'm going to talk about, I talked about 4 articles that I talked about in my overview. So the first one is Feliciano Chimbutane's Code Switching in L1 and L2 Learning Contexts. And in his article, he compares the positive and negative aspects of code switching in the classroom. So he takes a look at the views that code switching is distracting, and then he takes a look at the views that code switching is beneficial to students' comprehension skills in the L2. Chimbutane argues that allowing students to code switch helps them form their identity because the students' identities are evolving as they learn a second language and are probably in a new country. Code switching allows them to feel like they can use their L1 and their L2 as part of their new identity. He also argues that in environments where students are forced to use their L2 and not given the opportunity to use their L1, students experience a negative impact on their academic achievements. So environments in schools that ban the L1, that was supposed to be L1, that says L2, sorry, that ban the L1 are damaging to our students. So that's something we really need to think about as we're teaching. The second article that I looked at was Kristen Becker's Spanish-English Bilingual Code Switching, a Syncretic Model, and this was a really good article. I really liked it. So in the article, Becker argued against some myth that I've never even heard of, that says that students who speak more than one language are less capable than monolingual speakers. So Becker begins the article by claiming that bilingual students have double the vocabulary and therefore double the words to choose from. So she debunks that myth. And similarly to Chimbutane, Becker agrees that language plays a vital role in our identity. She states that bilingual students exist in 2 worlds and can function in either. However, these speakers prefer to combine both worlds and exist in both. Code switching allows students to exist in both worlds instead of choosing just one, which I thought was a really, really good way of putting it. The next article that I talked about was Tian and Macaro's article. It's a really long title, so I'm not going to read it to you because it's a really big mouthful. But they present code switching as a tool that allows students to better understand content. The study states that by having teachers who can code switch, students will better understand difficult material as it is introduced to them. If teachers introduce a concept in a student's L1, they can use their understanding in their L1 to aid their understanding in their L2. Additionally, they debunked the theory that students get confused about which language to use. Apparently, there's a theory that students, when they code switch, don't know which language they're supposed to be speaking in, which doesn't really make any sense to me because if you're in an English class and you code switch to your L1, which is, you know, whatever, Spanish, Vietnamese, whatever, I think it's going to be pretty obvious that your main focus in your target language is English, but they debunked that theory. And the last one I talked about was Mirjam Broersma's article, Triggered Code Switching Between Cognate Languages. And Broersma believes that code switching makes the L2 more difficult for the student because she says cognates cause unintentional code switching. So she's saying that in a sentence, when a student is writing in English and they use a cognate that is in Spanish, let's say, after they use that Spanish cognate, she's saying that they cannot differentiate and know that they need to continue writing in English after that. So she's saying once they start writing in Spanish and they use that Spanish cognate, they will keep writing in Spanish. I've never seen this happen. This is her belief, and this is the only negative article that I actually found. Influx of literature. Literature on code switching in the past 6 years has been positive. There's been a lot of it. There's been an influx of immigrants. In the United States specifically, there were 9.6 million immigrants in 1970, and there are 41.3 million as of 2013. So because of the influx of immigrants and the influx of immigrants in the education system, I think that there's been more literature about code switching because it's been more of a reality for the educators in the US specifically. So I think that's why there's been more literature, and thankfully it has been positive. What needs to be accomplished? I think there need to be more studies about code switching. I think there needs to be more education about it. I think that educators, administrators, the school board, they all need to be aware of code switching and its positive effects on education. And they also need to be aware that when they ban the L1, they're affecting students academically. So I think that there needs to be more education on that. Why code switching matters to me. As someone who's working to be an ESL teacher and who works with the ESL population, I see it as my personal responsibility to know everything there is to know about things that can help my students. So code switching is important. Working with the ESL community, they often code switch, so it's important to know. It's important to know the pros and cons about that. And this is the end of my presentation. I'm not going to read it, but you get it. I code switched. My Spanish is horrible, so I'm just not even going to go there. But anyway, thank you for listening to my presentation. I know it was a little over 5 minutes, so thanks for sticking with me.